In this video, I'm gonna talk about my favorite images from 2020. I've picked one image from each month, and I will talk through what I thought and why I considered it to be one of my favorites from that month. And there will be an assignment for you in the end of this video too, so be sure to watch it. Hi there, my name is Peter Forsgaard and I am an Olympus visionary and a professional photographer from Helsinki, Finland. And before we start talking about these images, I want to go through a few things that I always think when I looking at photographs and consider a photograph to be great or not. There are two things. Of course, it can be a generally great photograph which has everything in its place. The composition is great, there is a great story, colors are great, the subject matter is great, it has a documentary value, and all these things that are general to good photographs. But then a good photograph can also be a photograph that is good for you in a sense that it reminds you of things and it is really important thing in your life that you took the image. Or, as I said, it reminds you of something that has happened and is a document of that. It might not have great photographic values in a broader sense, but that doesn't matter. It might be a great story for you. And the images that I am about to show you are exactly those images that I have considered to be one of my favorites from 2020 because they have a story that reminds me of this very strange year and what has happened. And as I said, there is an assignment for you in the end too, and you will get some feedback on your favorite images, but some more about that in the end of this video. But let's dive into January 2020. January I went to northern part of Finland and met Olympus visionary Jari Peltomäki. He's great nature and wildlife and bird photographer and also a fellow Olympus visionary. And I visited a eagle hide that he has. This image is from that trip. It's one of my favorites from that trip because it wasn't really easy to photograph. I do have some images in flight and also, but I think I liked this one. No particular reason, it just reminds me of that trip. And I also made a video about that trip where I talked about birds in flight and Jari gave some really good insights on how to photograph birds in flight and about his camera settings, and you can watch it from there. Then let's go to February 2020. And this image is from Strasbourg, France, where I was on a trip, one of my last trips. Actually, after that I went to Sofia, and after that I haven't traveled at all because of the situation in the world. So this image is in a way very important because I like to travel and see new places and photograph new places. And I also had the 12 to 45mm f4 lens on that trip and made a review about that lens, and you can watch it from there. And that's why this image is important to me, because it reminds me of that trip. And I also like it as a good photograph because of the backlighting and the spider web in that small room on a bridge. Actually, it was a covered bridge, and they had kind of like a two-story bridge, and it had this room in the end, and it has, you know, the light came nicely through the window, and of course the editing is also made so that it's kind of like a sepia toned, which makes it a bit better in my opinion. The cold light that it was, I think it was a lot better like this when you have some warm colored light that comes through the spider web. And that's why I like it. The two things, it's actually, I think it's a pretty good photograph and it reminds me of that trip. And I remember the exact moment when I took the image, and that's why it's actually quite important to me, this image. And then March 2020. This image is from one of the last biggest photo gigs that I had during March 2020, or actually 2020 as a photographic thing. I've done some video work in the fall, but not very big photographic assignments. I have an image that have kind of like you can see through it because it's transparent material, and I wanted to have some light there, and you know, blue light is always considered to be kind of like a technology, and that's why I had some blue lights on the back. It reminds me of my last bigger photographic gig. I've done gigs after that, but you know, some small portrait sessions and stuff like that, but nothing really big that where you do a lot of images for a website. Then in April 2020, I did a lot of photographing at home, you know, small macro stuff. And then there was this image that I took for Easter. It's a light painted Easter egg. And if you want to see how I did that, there is a video about that over here. And it was actually Ken Rene in my Facebook group that made these pictures and made similar pictures. And that's why I got inspired by those photographs that he had made and wanted to try myself. Watch that video to see how this was made. It's one of my favorites from or the favorite image from April 2020. Then we come to May 2020, and this image is not a great photograph, to be honest. But it reminds me of a very strange time in Helsinki, because when we had the biggest lockdown so far, there was nobody, almost nobody. The city was empty. Nobody was there. All the stores were closed and nobody was there. And of course, I wanted to go out there and make some images, because that's a rare moment to make images in a busy city, even though Helsinki is not that crowded in any time. But usually this place, this is right in the center, is usually crowded all the time. Well, crowd is a different thing in really, really huge cities versus Helsinki, but a crowd here. But there was nobody there. And that's why this image is important, because it was really strange to see an empty city. Then on June is a bit strange thing, because I didn't really take or make any images during June, like 600, which is not much at all. The most things I did was, you know, just played around with macro. And this image of I think it's called a bilberry, not a blueberry, but a bilberry, I find kind of like visually pleasing. And that's why I took it and chose to be one of my favorite photographs from that moment. Because actually when I realized and went back to my images, I realized that I didn't take too many photographs during June at all, which is a bit strange. And then let's talk about July and my favorite image from that month. It was a month when I was able to test the EM10 Mark IV. And why I like this particular image is that it's a new suburb pretty close to downtown Helsinki that's being built. And I really like this type of city when you have by the sea and you have really nice looking buildings and you have some high rises also coming up. And, you know, it's totally a new neighborhood that used to be a harbor. And also the EM10 Mark IV and 12 to 45mm combo became my favorite go-to combination when I go out and shoot for myself. And that's why I like this image a lot. And then in August 2020, I had a chance to test a very rare lens, a $10,000 lens. It was the Zuiko 180mm f2 lens that is made for film cameras. And this image was taken with Olympus M1, one of the first SLRs that Olympus ever made. And there is an interesting story about this camera. It was the first SLR, as I told, and the name was M1. And after that, they only made these couple of thousand of these because the M1 name was changed to OM1 a year later, because Leica did not like that Olympus had a camera that was called M1. It was already registered to Leica, so they had to change the name. So this is the original OM1, the M1. And that's why this image is important, because it was really exciting to test that lens. And also what's interesting about this image is that this is the style that I used to have 10 years ago. I used to do a lot of this style images, really grainy, moody, black and white images. Okay, this might not be that moody, but you get the point. This was my style 10 years ago, and that's why it kind of made me feel good, because you're using film and going back to your own style was really interesting. Then in September, almost the same story as July, did not make that many images. This one is from an airport pretty close to my place where I live, called Malmi Airport, and they have this really nice looking staircase, and I went there and was able to also see the DC-3 Air Veteran and go inside there. But I think this image was one of my favorite, because I've done these types of images on different places during the years, and I have several other images similar to this, of these spiral staircases, and that's why I kind of like it. And I like the way it is black and white, and the way that the tones go, and you have all these bright lights, and then you have pitch black, and it's very contrasty, and I think it's also a pleasing photograph. A bit of a cliche, But a cliche is a cliche because it's widely used and considered to be pretty good. That's why I like this image. And then let's talk about October. This image is taken from our balcony. The reason it is an interesting image to me is that we've had really great sunsets and really nice golden hours and blue hours this year. And the really red sky is kind of a sad thing in a way because it's actually caused by the California forest fires. And that's not a good thing, but it made a stunning image, and it also reminds me of travels because this does not look a sunset in Finland. That's why I chose this image to be my favorite image from October. Let's talk about November 2020 and this image. This is actually my favorite image from the whole year 2020. And because this is an image that I've never taken before or been able to. Now I had the EM1X with its new Bird AF and got this image. Also used Pro Capture with Bird AF, and it works marvelously, and it really can help you to make better images. Of course, you still have to find the birds, you still have to find the subject, you still have to have the eye to do an image like this, but the technology can help you once you find your subject to kind of like make the image. And that's why I like technology in cameras that help us make better images, because this image would not have been possible a year ago for two reasons. First, I've practiced my bird photography, the reasons that I already told because of the long lenses, and then the technology. So two things, you need to practice and then kind of like take advantage of the technology. Then you can be better. And then let's talk about December 2020. This image was taken with the Laowa 10mm f2.0 lens that I had a chance to test before it's launched. This was taken during the Independence Day, and as you can see, there's not too many people around walking at the market square. It's the city hall that's in front, and using a smaller aperture, you can get the star effect, and Laowa is very good for that. It renders the stars really nicely. And also the reflection is something that I like about this image. And usually it's better to have some detail in the sky, but I kind of like the black sky and the yellow color. It's a nice color contrast, and it makes a nice image, I think. It's been a very strange year in 2020. I've taken a lot less images than I usually do this year, and maybe 2021 will be better in that sense, that we can really start living the way we used to. Or do we want that? I don't know. There are some good things about, working remotely and stuff like that. But let's not get into that, but let's get into the assignment that I will give you. Go back to your archives and pick your best or favorite image. And if you didn't remember how I figure out what is best and favorite, go back to the beginning of this video and watch it again. And pick it and send it to me. Those who have been taking part on my assignments know how to do it, but if you don't, then go down to the description of this video and see all the details about how to send your image. And I will give you feedback on my live stream on the 5th of January 2021. And as usual, I will pick 30 to 40 images. So if there has been a lot of images, unfortunately I cannot go through them all. Since this is my last video from 2020, I want to wish you all better year of 2021. And I will see you next year. But hey, thanks for watching and bye for now.